Welcome. You've really sent us down an interesting path this time.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, instead of the usual, stack of research papers, we're diving into something a bit different, something you flagged, excerpts from El Jaspel Scroll 2. The first glimpse, and this analysis, interpreting the second scroll of El Jaspel.
Right. It's quite a pairing.
It really is. And what makes it so compelling, I think, is this really kind of mind-bending idea that this ancient spiritual text might actually echo how modern science sees things.
Hmm.
The universe's origin, consciousness, even the power of language. So that's basically our mission today, right? To explore those, well, surprising connections for you.
Absolutely. And, it's not really about saying one's right and the other's wrong.
No, no.
It's more about exploring these potential resonances across different ways of knowing things. We'll look at how this ancient text talks about primordial unity, something like an observer emerging, the awakening of self-awareness, and this creative role it gives to language. And then, yeah, see where those ideas might, maybe surprisingly, click with current scientific thinking.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The El Jaspel scroll. It starts with this picture of a boundless all, a state where awareness is just there, but nobody's claiming it. Knowledge without a knower.
Yeah. Undifferentiated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then this first stirring happens, triggered by vibration, color, and something called a divine utterance. When you first read that, what connections popped out? Because for me, that idea of a beginning from formlessness, it immediately screamed Big Bang.
That's a fantastic connection to make right off the bat, and it's one the interpreting text dives straight into.
Okay.
I mean, think about the Big Bang Theory. Cosmology says the universe started not from, well, absolute nothing,
Right.
but from a singularity maybe, or a quantum vacuum, this state of just incredible energy and potential, virtual particles popping in and out. That boundless immersion in the scroll, you could almost read it as a poetic take on that formless fullness science talks about for the very, very early universe. It's pretty remarkable how both views, one ancient, maybe intuitive, the other super rigorous observation-based, they both start with this idea of an undifferentiated source.
And the first stirring, this vibration kicking things off, the interpretation mentions primordial sound waves, baryon acoustic oscillations. That sounds really specific. What's that about?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? These baryon acoustic oscillations, they're basically understood as like pressure waves rippling through the incredibly hot, dense plasma of the early universe.
Okay, like ripples in a pond.
Sort of. Yeah, that's a decent analogy. These cosmic sound waves, I mean, not sound you could hear,
Right.
but fluctuations in density. And they're actually crucial for how galaxies and the big structures in the universe eventually formed. Some scientists even use metaphors like a cosmic symphony. Or, as you mentioned, the interpretation brings up the cosmic Om, which, of course, directly echoes Hindu Vedanta, where Om is like the sound of creation.
Wow.
So you've got this ancient text talking about a foundational vibration and modern science finding actual, well, vibratory phenomena at the universe's beginning.
So a tremor in the scroll's infinite stillness and actual sound waves, well, density waves in the science model.
Okay.
And it gets even more interesting when the scroll talks about this oneness dividing, separation leading to strength. Science has symmetry breaking. Is that tapping into a similar idea?
It really seems like it could be. In that super hot, super dense early universe, the theory goes that all the fundamental forces we know, gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear force, they were all unified. One single force. But as the universe expanded and cooled incredibly fast, this perfect symmetry, well, it broke. The forces split off, differentiated into the distinct ones we see today. So it's a scientific story of one becoming many. A unified state giving rise to all the complexity and interactions governing the universe. It really does mirror the scroll's idea of an initial unity somehow, I don't know, fracturing, dividing, to create the multiplicity we see around us.
Yeah.
It's like the scroll captured a fundamental cosmic principle, just, through a different lens.
And what really jumped out at me from the interpretation was how it didn't just stop at the Big Bang. It pulled in all these analogous ideas from, wow, so many different traditions. Kabbalah, Gospel of John, Aboriginal songlines, Egyptian myths, Mayan myths. This theme of vibration or speech starting everything is just, it's everywhere.
It really is pervasive. Think about it. Hebrew Kabbalah God literally speaking the world into being.
Yeah.
Using words as creative tools.
Yeah.
The Australian Aboriginal songlines, ancestral beings singing everything into existence. The land, creatures, laws.
Incredible.
Gospel of John, the Logos, the Word, as the divine principle through which everything was made. Ancient Egypt, the God talk, creating through speech. Mayan traditions have creation via divine words, too.
Mm.
This recurrence, popping up independently across cultures, separated by huge distances and times, it suggests, maybe, some deep human intuition about a fundamental active principle, often tied to sound or language, right at the genesis of reality. Like they all somehow tapped into a similar core idea.
Okay, so we've got this unified start, started by something like vibration or a cosmic utterance. Then the scroll brings in the first prophet, a
Yeah.
witness separating from the all. That feels like a
Yeah.
huge shift. The emergence of something distinct. How does that resonate with science, the witness idea?
This is where it gets really, really interesting, especially when you bring in quantum physics.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Yeah. The interpretation draws this really fascinating parallel to the observer effect. In the quantum world, particles can exist in multiple states at once, superposition.
Right, until you look.
Exactly, until they're observed or measured. The very act of observing forces them to, like, pick a single state. Wave function collapse. So you can almost see a link to the scroll's witness, bringing definition to that undifferentiated all just by separating and observing.
That's mind-bending. So just by looking, or in the scroll's terms, by a witness emerging reality itself changes at a fundamental level. The interpretation even mentioned John Wheeler, participatory universe. No phenomenon is a phenomenon until it is observed. It's pretty radical.
It absolutely is. Wheeler's idea basically suggests reality isn't this fixed thing just sitting there, independent of us. Instead, our observations, our interactions, they play a key role in actually bringing about the reality we perceive. Now, the standard view in quantum mechanics doesn't strictly need a conscious human observer. Any measurement device interaction can do it.
Okay.
But still, the word observer itself hints at this fundamental role of something registering the quantum system. And yeah, there are more philosophical takes, like the von Neumann-Wigner interpretation, which controversially suggests consciousness itself causes the collapse. Highly debated, of course. But the core idea, that observation, the presence of a witness, is somehow tangled up with reality manifesting. That definitely resonates with the scroll.
And again, like the creation theme, this witness idea isn't just in the El Jaswal scroll. The interpretation points to similar concepts. Sankhya philosophy, Purusha as a witness.
Exactly. Sankhya philosophy has Purusha, which is pure consciousness, as this silent, passive witness to Prakriti, the primordial stuff of nature. Purusha's mere presence is said to kind of stir Prakriti into action, leading to the universe unfolding.
So consciousness is necessary even if passive?
That's the idea. It resonates with the quantum observer concept, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Similarly, Kabbalah talks about Ein Sof, the infinite Godhead. Contracting, it's called Tzimtzum, to make space for creation, creating a duality in observer and observed.
Oh.
And Gnostic myths often have a primal source, the monad emanating another to be witnessed or contemplated. So across these different systems, you see this recurring notion that a universe without some kind of observer, some distinct awareness, is somehow incomplete, unrealized.
Okay. Then the scroll moves on to consciousness awakening to itself. Subconscious reflection, it calls it. This sounds like the birth of I. Individual awareness. How does neuroscience tackle that? That's got to be complex.
Oh, incredibly complex. But neuroscience does offer some really compelling insights. Research suggests self-awareness isn't something we're just born with fully formed. It emerges gradually in babies.
Right.
And it seems linked to the development and activity of specific brain networks, particularly one called the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN. Okay, what does that do?
It gets really active when we're not focused on the outside world, when we're, daydreaming, reflecting, thinking about ourselves, remembering our past, imagining the future.
Ah, the internal chatterbox.
Kind of. It's thought to be crucial for creating our internal narrative, the ongoing story we tell ourselves about ourselves, who we are, our life story, our place in things. And that narrative seems fundamental to our sense of self.
So the DMN is like the brain's inner storyteller, weaving our experiences into a coherent me.
That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
It definitely echoes the scroll talking about consciousness awakening through reflection.
It does. And the interpretation brings up a really crucial element here. Language. Especially inner speech, that voice in your head. The theory, put forward by people like Vygotsky, is that using language to reflect on our own thoughts and feelings allows us to develop this higher order sense of self, an awareness of ourselves as individuals with minds.
Okay, so language isn't just for talking to others.
Exactly. It helps us talk to ourselves about ourselves. This lines up really nicely with the scroll tying the birth of language so closely to this awakening of selfhood. It's like language gives us the tools to know that we know, to become self aware, introspective beings. That makes a lot of sense. The interpretation also connects this to autobiographical memories, which need language, and the DMN, right? How they build that life narrative over time. It's almost like the scroll's first glimpse isn't just the universe waking up, but waking up to itself through us, through conscious, self-reflecting beings.
Precisely. And what's really interesting is that even when we're just resting, not doing anything specific, the DMN is humming away, doing this self-referential stuff.
Huh.
It's like our minds are constantly sort of illuminating themselves, reinforcing that sense of I that emerges from the unity the scroll starts with. It's this ongoing process of self-aware individuation, constantly weaving our personal story.
Which leads us naturally to language itself, because the scroll doesn't just treat speech as communication, it paints it as this fundamental creative force, like speaking actually makes things happen. How does that square with modern scientific views of language?
Well, the interpretation gets into the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, linguistic relativity.
Right, the idea that language shapes thought.
Exactly. In its different forms, it suggests the language we speak can influence, maybe even structure, how we perceive and think about the world. Now, the really strong version that language totally determines thought. Most linguists don't buy that anymore.
Okay.
But there's good evidence for weaker versions, like studies showing the color words your language has can actually affect how you perceive and remember colors. So words aren't just passive labels for reality.
Yeah.
They seem to actively participate in how we construct our experience of reality.
So, our language isn't just describing the world, it's helping build our understanding of it. That's a pretty strong link back to the scroll's idea of speech as creation.
It really is. And the interpretation goes further, touching on, say, the Kabbalistic view where language has ontological power,
Hmm.
meaning words aren't just symbols, they're seen as actual building blocks of reality, channeling divine energy, generating existence through utterance.
Wow. That's taking it a step further than just influencing thought.
Absolutely. It's about generating being. The interpretation also brings up cultural beliefs, like the Dogon people in Mali and their idea of nomo, the sacred power of the spoken word to shape reality, bring forth life. These traditions see language as this fundamental cosmic force, not just a communication tool.
It's amazing how this theme, the creative power of words, pops up in so many places. Ancient texts, linguistic theory, indigenous beliefs. The interpretation even mentions the new sphere, like a sphere of thought emerging with human language.
Yeah, the idea that complex language evolving in humans wasn't just about talking better. It enabled abstract thought, planning, shared culture, building these collective realms of knowledge, a new sphere that go beyond individual minds. So the scroll emphasizing the uttered word as key to creation. It really aligns with how science sees language as a fundamental architect, shaping both our inner thoughts and our shared external cultural worlds. Giving voice to ideas is a powerful form of creation.
Okay, so stepping back and looking at all these threads, the origin from unity, the observer emerging, self awareness developing, language as a creative force. What's the big picture takeaway here for you? How do you make sense of these resonances between, well, an ancient scroll and modern science?
Well, the way the interpretation wraps it up, I think, is quite compelling. It highlights this really profound alignment, doesn't it,
Yeah.
between the scroll's poetic, metaphorical language and the, empirical, analytical language of quantum physics, cosmology, neuroscience, linguistics.
Yeah.
It suggests that maybe both paths, ancient intuition and modern science, are grappling with the same deep questions
Huh.
about reality, consciousness, our place in it all. It points towards this unifying theme. Reality seems to unfold through some dynamic interplay between consciousness and expression, being and becoming.
So maybe the ancient seers, through their own methods, intuition, deep introspection, maybe they glimpse truths that science is now starting to uncover with its own tools.
It's possible. Or at least they formulated analogous concepts. It suggests mystical insight and scientific inquiry might just be different perspectives, different languages, trying to describe the same fundamental mysteries.
Right. Two sides of the same coin, maybe.
Perhaps. And as the interpretation concludes, it really hammers home that powerful recurring idea, utterance, in all its forms, whether it's a cosmic vibration, a quantum measurement, a spoken word, an inner thought, seems to be fundamentally an act of creation.
Yeah, that really comes through. Whether it's the scroll's divine utterance, or a physicist collapsing a wave function by measuring it, or us shaping our understanding with language, bringing something into definition through expression seems core.
Exactly. These parallels are genuinely striking. They really invite you to consider if there's some deeper underlying unity in how we try to understand the universe and ourselves.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into the first glimpse, it really is astonishing, isn't it? This potential alignment you pointed us towards between ancient wisdom and what science is saying today.
It makes you think.
It absolutely does. And it leaves you wondering if utterance in all these ways really is a creative act. What power do our own words, our own thoughts actually hold? How much do they shape our personal reality, our understanding of the world?
Hmm.
Maybe this ancient scroll, read alongside modern science, isn't just history or physics. Maybe it's a profound reflection on existence itself, something to keep mulling over.
Absolutely. And hopefully this exploration encourages everyone listening to keep thinking about these connections, to stay open to that ongoing conversation between, ancient insights and present-day discoveries. It's just the journey to understand everything is, well, it's a continuous one, drawing from all kinds of human knowing.